The autumn sun cast long shadows across the cobblestone plaza of Florence's Piazza della Signoria, where street performers competed for the attention of passing tourists. Among them stood Marcus Chen, a 52-year-old man whose weathered hands and paint-stained fingers told stories his mouth no longer shared. His cardboard sign read simply, "Art for Kindness." Most pedestrians hurried past without a second glance. To them, Marcus was invisible, just another face in the city's growing homeless population. His gray hair hung past his shoulders, and his clothes, though clean, bore the marks of someone who slept in doorways and ate from charity kitchens, but Marcus had a secret. Before addiction and tragedy had stolen everything from him, he'd been on the verge of greatness, a protégé at the Accademia di Belle Arti, praised by critics, courted by galleries. That life seemed like someone else's dream now. "Excuse me, could you spare some change?" Marcus asked a young woman in designer sunglasses. She clutched her purse tighter and walked faster. Across the plaza, 28-year-old Isabella Ricci emerged from a black Mercedes, her entourage following like shadows. Isabella was the granddaughter of Vittorio Ricci, who owned half the art galleries in Tuscany. She'd grown up assuming that talent was something you could buy, that connections mattered more than skill, and that people like Marcus were beneath her notice. "Bella, darling, we're late for the gala," her assistant, Paolo, reminded her. Isabella's eyes landed on an enormous blank canvas that had been set up in the plaza for the city's annual Art for Everyone festival. Any artist could approach it and contribute. She smirked at the sight of Marcus standing nearby, clearly considering whether to paint. "How quaint," Isabella said loudly enough for her friends to hear. "The festival committee thinks letting homeless people play with paintbrushes counts as culture." Her companions laughed dutifully. Marcus said nothing, but his jaw tightened. He'd encountered people like Isabella before, people who measured worth in euros and zip codes. Isabella walked over to the canvas, her heels clicking against the stones. She pulled out her phone and addressed her social media followers. "Here's a challenge for my followers. This year's festival prize is a fully restored vintage Alfa Romeo Spider, worth over 50,000 euros. I'm going to make this interesting." She turned to Marcus. "You, old man. If you can create something on this canvas that genuinely impresses me, and I mean truly impressive, not some amateur nonsense, I'll give you my own car. The Mercedes right there." She gestured at the gleaming vehicle. "But when you fail, I want you to admit, on camera, that people like you don't belong in artistic spaces." The crowd that had gathered murmured. Some looked uncomfortable. Others pulled out their phones. Marcus studied Isabella's face. He saw no malice there, exactly, just an absolute certainty that she was superior, that this would be entertaining, that he would fail spectacularly. "What are the rules?" Marcus asked quietly. "Rules?" Isabella laughed. "Paint whatever you want. You have until sunset, about 3 hours. I'll judge it then. Those are the only rules." Marcus nodded slowly. "I accept." Isabella's smile widened. This would make excellent content for her social media. The tragic homeless artist, humiliated by his own inadequacy. Her followers would love it. What Isabella didn't know was that Marcus had spent the last 5 years sketching in the margins of borrowed newspapers, practicing technique on scraps of cardboard, keeping his skills sharp even as everything else crumbled. He'd convinced himself he would never paint again, that he'd lost the right to call himself an artist, but something in Isabella's contemptuous smile ignited something he thought had died years ago: pride. Purpose. Defiance. Marcus approached the canvas. Someone from the festival committee, recognizing the gathering crowd, quickly provided professional-grade paints and brushes. News of the challenge was already spreading on social media. People were arriving by the minute. "This is going to be painful to watch," Isabella said to Paolo. "Should we get coffee and come back?" "Actually," Paolo said hesitantly, "he's moving very confidently." Isabella looked. Marcus had begun with confident, sweeping strokes, no hesitation, no sketching. He was working from pure instinct and memory. Beginners always start with false confidence, Isabella dismissed. Give it time. But as the minutes became an hour, then 2 hours, Isabella's amusement curdled into something else. Marcus wasn't painting like a homeless man grateful for attention. He was painting like a master who'd been waiting years for a canvas worthy of his skill. The image emerging was a portrait unlike anything Isabella had seen. It showed two figures, a wealthy woman in fine clothes standing before a mirror, but the reflection showed not her face but the face of a beggar, hollow-eyed and desperate. Around them, the city burned and bloomed simultaneously, death and rebirth intertwined. The technique was extraordinary, layers of glazing that created an almost three-dimensional effect, brushwork that shifted from precise to expressionistic as the eye moved across the canvas. The crowd had grown to hundreds. People recognized something special unfolding. "Who is this man?" someone whispered. An older woman in the crowd gasped. "I know that style. Those hands. My God, it's Marcus Chen. He was my professor at the Accademia 20 years ago, before his daughter died and he disappeared." The story rippled through the crowd. The brilliant teacher who'd lost his only child to illness, turned to alcohol to numb the pain, lost his position, his home, his entire identity. Some had assumed he'd died. Isabella felt her stomach twist. She'd expected a clumsy amateur. Instead, she was watching a master pour years of pain and wisdom onto canvas. Each brushstroke contained more genuine emotion than all of Isabella's purchased artworks combined. As the sun approached the horizon, Marcus stepped back. He was breathing hard, paint splattered across his threadbare clothes. The portrait was complete, the crowd erupted in applause. Isabella stood before the canvas, speechless. She'd studied art her entire life, or rather, she'd studied how to appear knowledgeable about art. But she knew enough to recognize that what Marcus had created in 3 hours was worth more than everything in her apartment. "Well?" Marcus asked quietly. "Your judgment?" The crowd fell silent. Isabella was trapped. Her social media followers were watching live, thousands of them. She could feel the weight of expectation. She could lie. Claim it was amateur work. Her family's influence would ensure most people played along. She could humiliate him as planned and drive away in her Mercedes, but standing before that canvas, looking into the painted eyes that seemed to see through all her pretensions, Isabella felt something she hadn't experienced in years: shame. "It's..." Her voice cracked. She tried again. "It's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen." The crowd cheered. Isabella reached into her purse with trembling hands and pulled out her car keys. She held them out to Marcus. "I made a promise," she said. "The car is yours." Marcus looked at the keys for a long moment, then gently pushed her hand back. "Keep your car," he said. "I don't need it. What I needed was to remember that I'm still an artist. You gave me that, even if you didn't mean to." He turned to the festival organizers. "Donate the painting to the city. Use it however you think best. And use the prize money from the festival, the Alfa Romeo, sell it and give the money to the homeless shelter on Via dei Saragli. They need it more than I do." Isabella felt tears streaming down her face, real tears, not the photogenic kind she'd perfected for social media. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Marcus studied her for a moment, then nodded. "You're young. You have time to become better than you are today. Don't waste it." He walked away into the evening crowd, leaving Isabella standing before the canvas. That night, Isabella donated €100,000 to art programs for the homeless. It wasn't enough, it couldn't undo her cruelty, but it was a start. She also did something else. She used her family's connections to locate Marcus and offer him a teaching position at a youth art center. She made it clear it wasn't charity, she needed someone who understood that art came from truth, not privilege. Marcus considered the offer for 3 days before accepting. Not because he needed Isabella's permission to be an artist again, but because he realized he'd been given a second chance to do what he'd always done best: help others discover their own voices. The canvas remained in the Piazza della Signoria, protected by glass now, a permanent reminder that genius doesn't wear designer clothes, and talent doesn't live in the places we expect to find it. And sometimes, the greatest gift isn't a car or money or even recognition. It's being reminded of who you truly are, underneath everything the world has taken from you.